Good evening, everyone. Could you please take your seats? We'll begin. We'd like to welcome you here this evening. Just so that everyone has the ability to understand what we're saying, we'd like to bring up our interpreters for the evening so that we can have all of the languages represented.
Hi, everyone. My name is Padao, and I'm helping coordinate interpreting services tonight. So as mentioned, if you need interpreting services, tonight we have Hmong, Spanish, Somali, and Oromo interpreters on site. So if you need our service, we'll be right in the back corner, and we can give you some headset equipment to support you.
Buenas noches a las personas que hablan español. Si necesitan un intérprete de español, estamos en la mesa de la derecha y nos pueden solicitar ahí.
Maqaan kiyya leelloodha. Namni afaan Oromoo beeku asii yoo jiraate galgala kana yoo gargaarsa feetan achi taa'u jirra. Achi nu gaafattanii yoo meeshaanis ni jira achi duuba sanii soo kanaaf nutti hotta.
Nhớ rồi đó thứ sáu yêu nên theo mong nó vậy đã cá bên mấy lưu trữ mong bên chơi chạy lùi là đã cá bên nó trong bên lưu trữ đồ này cho nó ở chỗ.
haddii aad u baahan tahay af Soomaali in lagu turjumo af Ingiriis diyaar baan ku nahay halka gadaal ayaan nagala soo xiriiraysan. Assalaamu calaykum.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my school. This is the Commons area. My name is Mari Melander Friesleben. I have the honor and privilege of being the principal here at North Community High School. And I'm just gonna welcome you and give you a little bit of a peek into where you are, where you're sitting right now. And also we have a resident expert, Buzzy Bond, literally is a North High School historian. So if I say anything wrong right now, she's definitely gonna correct me afterwards. Just hopefully it's not on Facebook and public for everyone to know. You are in the renovated North High School right now. So you are at 1500 James Avenue North. North High School has been around since 1888. The original North High School building was not where you are right now. Does anyone know where anyone other than Buzzy Bond know where the original North High School was? Yes, ma'am. Exactly. Go ahead, Buzzy. Do your thing, Buzzy. 18th and Emerson, for those of you in the back.
That school became Logan Elementary, and then the second building and the third building were the football field.
And then this iteration was right around the 1970s. I believe the 73-74 school year was this version's first school year that it opened. Do you know what street you're sitting on right now? You're sitting on James Avenue. So when this version was built, it was two separate buildings. And James Avenue continued, you could actually drive up and down James, and you could drive right in between both buildings. And in the 2019-2020 school year, Minneapolis Public Schools decided that they were not going to close officially North High School. And they were going to continue to support enrollment and increasing enrollment. And in order to do that, that meant that the facility needed to be attended to because it had been neglected for so many years. When I started in 2019-2020, there were 368 students that started with me that fall. This fall, there were 635. And so we have increased every year. The building is beautiful. It is about 70% done. It's not completely done. You are in the most extremely renovated space right now where they opened up both buildings and connected them. The city was very supportive for us at that time. They actually rerouted the sewer system that was running down James Avenue. They rerouted it so that it goes over on 16th, down Knox, and back down to James on 14th. We love this space. The kids love the space. The staff loves the space. This is where we eat breakfast and lunch. Every morning and every afternoon. We have an amazing tech center right over here behind you. That's also where you're going to find the bathrooms. So if you need a restroom, you're going to be going right through that door to my right and behind you to your left. We also have a family night going on right now, so we have a number of our Latino and Latina and Latinx families in our library over behind. So if you see us moving around, that's what we're doing, and some of them might come out. When we were approached and asked if we would be willing to host tonight's session, we said absolutely. We definitely believe that we are a community school. We are a school for the community, and we want as many community events to happen here as possible. So welcome to North High School on behalf of myself and all of the students and staff here, and on behalf of the community that is so proud of this building. Welcome, and I hope that you enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We're going to get started. We have a lot to discuss with you all. So, first of all, I'm David Douglas. I'm the president of ELEFA, and I'm the co-lead of the evaluation team. Appreciate all of you coming, especially those of you who were here last night. I wish I could tell you the information has changed. So the information hasn't changed. The presentation's not going to change much. But the one thing we all did learn last night is that I actually can't stand at a podium and use a microphone. So tonight they've given me a lavalier because I am a pacer. All right. So my question I'm going to start off tonight is the same as we started off last night. How many of you, including those who were here last night, were at one or more of the public sessions where we were initially presenting and where you were interviewing us for this job? Terrific. So we very much appreciate and thank you for the faith you've placed in us. We are very committed to this mission. We're all passionate about this idea of aligning the interests of the police and the public to create safer communities for everybody. And we really believe that Minneapolis and the focus on public engagement is going to be key to the success here, and we really believe it is going to be a model for the nation. So thank you all for the trust you've placed in us, and we will not break that faith with you as we begin this journey. All right. Now, just to level set, the agreement that guides our work and constrains our work provides that we have to have 3 public meetings a year. And so this meeting is in compliance with that requirement, but it's actually something we embrace. So we're here not because we have to be, we're here because we believe in this kind of engagement. So let me tell you first what we hope to do tonight. We have 4 basic objectives for this meeting. First of all, we want to update you on what we have been doing. Second, we want to explain a little bit about how we do what we do. It's one thing to say we've reviewed and approved a policy, but we want you to at least have some understanding of what that means, how we approach it, how we decide whether a policy not only satisfies the requirements of the agreement, but whether it accomplishes the overall purposes of the agreement. We want to engage. We have some information we're going to ask you about tonight. We want your input on something we're considering. And then the most important thing is we want to achieve understanding. So we want you to understand what we've been doing, but we want to understand from you your questions and concerns, so we will have plenty of time for questions and comments. I will let you know, I think based on last night, we're going to run about an hour. Maybe we are a little faster tonight, maybe a little bit slower, but we're going to mostly talk at you for about an hour, but then we're going to have a discussion. So within each of these buckets, let me just tell you specifically what we're going to cover. So in terms of the update, what we want to talk about is community engagement. We have spent a big chunk of our time getting to know this community, the public, and the police department. And of course, as many of you know, we generated an evaluation plan. We're going to touch on that a little bit. It's a requirement under the agreement that we do a 90-day assessment and then develop a plan. We'll touch on that, but to tell you the truth, it's largely a technical document. I think it's the least interesting thing we've done. So we're going to spend more time talking about the more interesting parts of what we've done, but we're happy to answer any questions about it that people may have. And I should say we've met with a number of members of the public and community groups, and we are impressed with how engaged people are, because people have said to me, well, here on page 73, I was like, holy cow, I have to read my own document. So we appreciate that level of engagement. So we want to explain, as we begin this journey together, we want you to know how we go about doing what we have to do. So we'll tell you about the project management approach we take, and then we're going to ask Lisa Fink, our lead for policy engagement, to talk about how we evaluate policies and how we decide whether they meet the requirements of the agreement. Our team meets every week to report to each other on what happens. We usually have some big topics, but then we conclude each one with a sort of a lightning round. We say, give us 2 minutes on anything else we haven't covered, so we're going to sort of do that lightning round, and members of our team will give you just 2 minutes on the status of the areas that they're working on. Engagement. So we want to talk about, we're going to do this in reverse order. One of the things we discussed in our plan, and one of the things we're still thinking about and working through, is the idea of a community liaison, or an implementation liaison council. So we want to tell you about our thoughts on that, but we want to get some feedback from you in real time about that idea, and I'm going to touch in a minute on how we're going to do that. And then we want to talk about the role of a community partner. And then, as I said, the most important is understanding, and we'll take your questions and answers. Now, before we start this, I want to address 2 important issues that we know are of great concern in this community currently. The first is the incident in which Mr. Muturi was shot and how the police handled the matter up until the incident and how they responded to the incident. We're aware of that, but I will tell you there's not much we have to say about it. Happy to take questions or comments about it, but we are monitoring it. We understand the city is going to do an external review like you. We're waiting to see what that is, and we'll certainly be monitoring that closely. But we, at this point, candidly, don't know more than you know, and we probably know less than some of you know. But we're happy to discuss it to the extent we can and have anything helpful to say in the question and answer. The second issue that is top of mind in this community right now is what the incoming Trump administration means for the likelihood of a federal consent decree. So I recognize the irony of saying we're here to tell you a lot of things and starting off with 2 things I can't tell you anything about. Not because I can't tell you, but I don't really know anything about that process. We're not part of those discussions. We don't know the status of them. But what I don't want to be lost in this process or with those questions is the importance of the work we have to do. The current agreement with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights will deliver important, meaningful, and measurable change to the way policing is conducted in this community. And that will happen regardless of whether there is a federal consent decree. There's nothing the federal government can do to derail that. So we believe that we can accomplish our purposes with the existing tool we have. And the truth is, any consent decree sets a floor for policing. You all will decide what the ceiling is, because when our work here is done and change has happened, you all will decide what else, if anything, needs to happen. So we are here to begin a process with you, and after we leave, you will continue on. But it is our commitment that you will have seen a difference in the way policing happens in this community that will be both safer and more effective for the police and for all of you, right? So, with that, the Mentimeter icebreaker. Some of you are old pros at this from last night. If you have a cell phone and are so inclined, if you take a photo of the QR code that's about to appear behind me, I hope. I think we're switching over to, there we go. If you take a picture of that QR code, it will take you to a survey. And we will ask you a couple of times throughout the evening, we're going to ask you for feedback on important issues. But to test it out, we're going to ask for your feedback on an unimportant issue. We all travel a lot. We all like to eat. But what we don't want to do is just go to the place that the hotel will tell us about. We want to know the places that the people in this community like. So our first question to you all is, what is your favorite hidden gem restaurant? Where do you go for a good meal that we might not otherwise find? So that's the first question, and I think, is this the slide from last night? This is, people are already, okay. So now we stay across from Classics Kitchen, so we have been there quite a bit, and we love that place. I can't see, I think we went to Boucheron. So, Beludo. Beludo is the team, that is the team restaurant. We have not gotten here this time, but most trips we actually build around a dinner at Beludo. We tried lunch at Beludo, but we don't have the restraint to eat a measured lunch there, and it ruins our afternoon, so we can only go there at the end of our day. But we look forward to sampling these other places. But I applaud you all for demonstrating your ability to master the technology so quickly. Don't tell them, but it was much faster than South Minneapolis did last night. All right, what's next? Let's get to work. I think what's next is community engagement as it just takes a minute for we're using, some is PowerPoint and this is a live website, so we just have to switch back and forth. But as I said, we have spent a lot of our time getting to know this community, meeting with a lot of individuals and groups. And so to describe that work, I'd like to invite Arlinda. Community map, thank you. So for those of you who were here at the public meeting, you'll remember we talked about building a community map. And the purpose of that community map is to help all of you who are engaged in the policing and policing practices and change could get to know each other, so that we could begin laying the foundation for structures so that you all will have a framework and a network to carry on the work after we're gone. So we have begun to build the community map. You can go and find it on our website. Looks like this is the website. That's how it comes up. If you go to it, you can see the different organizations we've populated it with. Those are the gray dots. Between the gray dots are the links. Those links represent the other organizations that you are tied to. And then we also have a survey, and we're going to ask you for information about that. Go back. You'll see there's an outer ring. Okay, what's happening here? Each of the dots has an outer ring, and that outer ring gives even more information about the mission of the organization. Is police reform your primary mission? Maybe your primary mission is mental health or behavioral health, but it touches policing as a secondary issue. So the map will give you a high-level picture of those entities and organizations, including the police department and all the governmental organizations that are engaged in policing. But we're just building the map, and so we need your help to continue to build the map so that it continues to grow throughout the course of our work. So I think that was what was coming up. This is our next QR code. This will take you to a survey about your organization. And it will give you the opportunity to identify the organization and answer some questions about your relationships and your mission. And if you don't want to do it tonight, you can get to it through our website, and the map itself is accessible on our website, and it updates as we get new information. And also, we'd like feedback along the way about whether people find this to be helpful. All right. Now, the map gives us a high-level, one-dimensional view of those organizations that are engaged in policing in Minneapolis, but we have spent a lot of time digging down deeper, getting to know people, getting to know organizations. And so to discuss what we have done in that area, I'm going to invite up Arlinda Westbrook, one of the deputy evaluators and also our team lead for community engagement.
Good evening, everyone. How are you doing this evening? My name is Arlinda Westbrook, and yes, I am one of the leads for community engagement, but I also am a lead for oversight and accountability and non-discriminatory policing. Tonight, I'll be talking about our work so far in community engagement. One of the things that I've been extremely impressed by is the amount of engagement that I've found when we first entered and came to Minneapolis. Even during the time when we were interviewing, we had several groups that reached out to us during that time and wanted to interview us before we even interviewed with the entire community, because they had that much engagement in this process. One of the first invitations we got was from CUAPB. And one of the things I want to say about this organization is the amount of work that they've done in helping us engage with the community, but mostly the amount of work they've done with helping with police policies. I see one of the gentlemen here that works very directly with that organization, and they spend countless hours giving feedback on policies that are very much affected within the settlement agreement. And they give the city, MPD, and through MPD, ELEFA, input on those policies. So the work that I've seen, the engagement that I see so far in terms of the amount of work in this community is phenomenal. One of the other things I want to talk about is a number of the groups that we've had the privilege of working with, meeting, and visiting with. NAACP Minneapolis is one of the organizations that we've had multiple meetings with. They have brought us through their site. They are one of the organizations that has a site and where they are trying to build their site for accepting complaints. And so again, another organization that's trying to find a place to assist us with this process of reform in Minneapolis. We also had Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors that we've worked with and that have done countless work in this field. 21 Days of Peace, Young People's Task Force. I saw their president walk in just a little while ago. These are young people that are working in the area of legislation, looking at police reform. They've been trying to assist with recruiting for the police department, bringing other young people into the police department that look like them, that they want much more representation on the police department from some of the impacted communities. They've done some incredible work in the area of reform. And the reason I keep saying that, and I'm gonna continue going through this list, is because I don't want to give the impression that we're here educating Minneapolis. Minneapolis has educated me on what it is to be engaged in a process well before this settlement agreement came. This settlement agreement is really the floor, and some of the work I'm seeing with the communities in Minneapolis is the beginning of how this reform will be sustained well past ELEFA and well past any settlement agreement. That was the reason for wanting to build a council. And in other cities where we've just had meetings like this, we realized we need to come up with something that's a lot more engaging in Minneapolis because there's so much engagement already. Most of the communities I meet with have read through the settlement agreement, have outlined the settlement agreement. They've educated me on pieces of the settlement agreement that are very important to them. They've taken policies and redlined them and given them to the city. That's not the typical engagement I've seen throughout the country, and many of the people on this stage will tell you in many of the other consent decree cities, we're not seeing that level of engagement. Minneapolis is well on its way to make sure that they are a model city for what community engagement looks like and what it is to sustain reform in Minneapolis. The other groups that we've met with is the Somali Education, Voice of East African Women, many. And one of the things that, one of the groups in particular also, along with the coalition of groups I've just spoke of, is Uni Community Mediation Team, who also, immediately when we came on site, the first day we got here, they walked us to many of the different communities I just talked about, and they actually walked us through each of those different communities. We went to them. We didn't call a meeting to have them come to us. We went to their communities, we sat with them, we listened. We wanted to know what their experiences have been, what they want to see in engagement, what do they want to see in reference to this settlement agreement going forward. Not in terms of the paragraphs, but how they want to see themselves working through this process along with ELEFA. So we have worked tirelessly for the first few months, and I'm gonna say we're just at the beginning. All we've done so far is meet, greet, and get to learn some of the stories of some of the impacted communities. Now the work begins. We want to really sit down, and I want to meet most of you that are here that have not had the opportunity yet to be a part of our map. Please fill out the survey. Please become a part of the map. Please become engaged, just like many of the other communities, because what we want this process to be is what we've said is that everyone has a seat at a table, and we want all of you to be walked along as we move through this process. The first piece of this process is dealing with policies. That's the floor. That's the beginning of the implementation of the settlement agreement. You need good policies, then you need training. So we want to make sure that you are educated and engaged with us as we walk along and make sure that we're transparent in that process. We still have more work to do. Another organization that has been critical, that is already a part of you, is the CCPO. They are critical to the reform and to continuation of what's going to be done through Minneapolis throughout. They have two critical places that they assist in. One of the areas based on their ordinance is they assist also in giving feedback in reference to policies, similar to CUAPB. They have given the city some examples and some feedback in reference to policy. The other critical area is they have a very important area when it comes to our disciplinary system here in Minneapolis. They are the ones that sit on the panel and represent on the panel and go through the process of the disciplinary process. So they have two very critical roles, and we want to continue that process of making sure that they are aware, that you as a community are aware that they exist, aware that they're in place, and make sure that you're utilizing them for being a voice for the different impacted communities within Minneapolis also. The last thing I want to say is that one of the things that has been also extremely, extremely critical to our process is even Plymouth congregation also. What they have done is assisted us with meeting and expanding our reach with a number of law firms that have decided and signed up and said, we want to be a part of this reform. What can we do? How can we use our volunteer hours to help some of the communities? How can we use our volunteer hours to help you with this reform process? They introduced us to a number of them, and we realized that's a resource here in Minneapolis that I haven't seen other places, where law firms reached out to us, and through the connection with Plymouth congregation said, how can we help? The connection with League of Women Voters that are here tonight, how can we help? And so that's another thing that Minneapolis has in its arsenal of ways that some of the community groups can be supported. And as we move forward through this process, what we're trying to do with this liaison council and what we're trying to do with the local partners is take all of the great work that's happening with individual organizations in a silo and bring it all together. Because the truth is that the way this is going to be done is with all of us together. And whatever things that have been difficult before, there are many that have been disillusioned by process before. They've gotten lots of promises and don't believe that we're going to move forward. Let's do a reset. And let's try to make sure that as a community that we start now and that we move forward to make sure that Minneapolis will be the model that I know it can be in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlinda. Now, you'll notice one of the things we haven't done that's typically done is introduce everybody and giving you all their extensive, impressive credentials. Everyone on the team has them, but we wanted to just get to it, so we put their bios up, and it's on the handout. And let's face it, if you talk to someone and they have to tell you how smart they are, that's not as effective as just telling you and showing you how smart they are. The one thing I do want to say, however, one of the things that we believe has made our team special is that it is comprised of both people who have experience as monitors and people who have worked in police departments under consent decrees. And that's where I first met Arlinda and Chief Harrison. And so I'm going to make one exception for Chief Harrison to say he is the only chief in the country to drive change through two police departments, New Orleans and Baltimore. So there is no one in the country more experienced at the change process you all are beginning with your police department than Michael Harrison. And when we talk about engagement, it's not just with the community, it has to be with the police department, because they are the ones who need to change. And so I'm going to ask Michael to come up and share his perspectives about engaging with the police department and the process of driving reform.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. It's good to see you. Some of you I saw last night. For those of you who don't know me here tonight, my name is Michael Harrison. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I did 28 years in the New Orleans Police Department. The last 4.5 of those, I was the chief of police. Was recruited and went to Baltimore, Maryland to be the police commissioner, did 4.5 years there. Both departments and cities were under federal consent decrees. In 2012, the Department of Justice called New Orleans the most troubled department in America. Then in 2017, they called Baltimore the most dysfunctional and broken department in America. And I had the responsibility of leading change in both of those departments under those reform mandates. And today, while neither of them are perfect, they both are very different departments that underwent significant culture change and perform very differently today than they did when it started. They have become what we now aim to help the Minneapolis Police Department to become, which is a self-assessing and self-correcting police department. I too have met with many of you and built many promising relationships with members of this community, but I've also, in my role, spent significant amounts of time meeting with members of the police department, meeting with union representatives and leadership. I've been to many, if not all, of the roll calls in all of the precincts, done ride-alongs, met with officers from the newest employees all the way up to the chief, the assistant chiefs, inspectors, commanders, and everybody in between. I wasn't just meeting with them just to introduce myself and explain my role to them, but rather to help them understand and accept the reform initiatives that are happening within their own police department. I had to explain pretty intensely to some how their authority to enforce the law has not changed, because the Constitution has not changed. They can do what police have always been able to do, but there's a right way to do it. There's a national best practice way that they are now expected to perform, a way that promotes public safety while also being transformed and reformed. They are now expected to police in a way that builds relationships that were never built and repairs the relationships that were broken. I spent a lot of time listening to the members talk about what's important to them, how they now view their community that they serve, and how the community members view them as the people who serve them. They're all concerned about the leadership in the police department and how the leadership treats them and cares for them, but they're also concerned about city officials and government officials, how they perceive they treat them and care for them. I meet with Chief O'Hara pretty regularly in person, virtually, and by phone, not just to bring him the concerns of his officers, but to offer myself as a resource and share my experience with the chief, who is now responsible for making really tough and hard decisions on personnel matters, operational matters, management functions, changing the status quo. He's responsible for the policy and the training decisions that make the police officers now have to unlearn previous bad practices and then reteach them so that they will learn the new and best practice way. And this new and best practice way is not really new, it's just hard, because change is hard. And people will say they don't like change. That is not true. What happens is people are afraid of loss, L-O-S-S, what they lose with change. Give them a promotion, they're happy. Take something away, they resist. And so change can be hard, but we're helping them to understand and accept change. It's not new, it's just new to them. Certainly decisions should be made that are in favor of the community and in favor of the organization alike. No decision should be made in favor of any individual person or any individual member. I also spent a considerable amount of time balancing the role of monitoring the police department and then reporting out to you, the community. we are always assessing the police department's willingness and capacity, or the lack thereof, to make these reforms and to meet the deadlines. Much of my role is to help the chief and the department correct any unwillingness, which we have not seen, and correct any capacity deficiencies and to help them build capacity. So in addition to co-leading the team, I'm also here to remind this city and to remind this community and to remind the police department that reform and transformation are possible, even while providing public safety. It can be done because it has been done. We are a team made up of both monitoring and management that have made it happen and seen it happen in 2 other cities, and we look forward to the day when it happens right here in Minneapolis. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, so now let's talk about how we do what we do. I started my career in Boston, and I was a community activist. And one of the things we agitated for, we had a big issue with affordable housing in Boston's South End. Anybody know Boston's South End? Long way from here, okay. So we persuaded the city to donate a parcel of vacant land, and we were awarded a contract to build 90 units of mixed income housing. Of course, we had no idea how to build 90 units of mixed income housing, but fortunately we got good lawyers to contribute and consultants, and then we worked with an architect and a builder. And as the construction started, I was the owner's representative to the construction meetings, and I learned how they built the building. And what they do is they come up with a huge checklist. Now, this was a long time ago. It was typed with a typewriter on paper. But that checklist covered everything from the start where they put the fence around the property to installing the plates on the electrical switches. And they met every week, and the general contractor held everybody to account. I can't put the pilings in until you drive the holes, and I've got pilings sitting that I've paid for, and it's costing me money, so get that work done. And that's then, the light bulb for me went off. That's really how I've run my litigation. I won't say anything else about how we run the team. Suffice it to say, I'm a big believer in a project management approach to tough tasks. And that's what we've done here. So when you think about the agreement, it is a 500-paragraph checklist of things the department and the city has to get done. And so what we have done is taken each of those paragraphs and broken it down into each of the steps that the department or the city need to accomplish to meet the requirement of the paragraph. And we track it all in a huge program. It's a smart sheet. And it records everything from clearing the land to installing the electrical plates, and if we laid it out on paper, it would stretch across this stage. But we then slice and dice it and use it on the issues we're developing. And so I think, and this is just a sample of it. But that's how we meet regularly with the department, and we go through where are we on this, and it tells us what the status of items are and when it's supposed to start, when it's supposed to be completed. Are we on track? Are we off track? Is it at risk? Does it need attention? Things change. Sometimes we just have to change a date. But it keeps everybody on the same page. It keeps everybody coordinated, and importantly, it holds everybody accountable, including us. If we have 2 weeks to review a policy, it's on the smart sheet, and the department can tell us, you owe us an answer tomorrow. So that's how we manage it. The other thing I wanted to say about this process, while we're called an evaluator or a monitor, the more accurate term would be coach. Our job, to pick up on what Michael was talking about, is to use our expertise to help coach the department through the changes they need to make, because we are asking people to do things they've never done before, things they haven't been trained to do, and we're asking them to do that on top of the things they are already responsible for doing. So we want to help them do it, and sometimes, to keep with my construction analogy, sometimes they find obstacles and we say, just like in a building, this is not a weight-bearing wall. We can knock it down. Sometimes it's a weight-bearing wall and we have to work around it. But part of our job is to clear out the obstacles that the department faces to achieving the goal. And that's how we do our job at a high level. One of the things that is our priority for year one is the review of policies, and Arlinda mentioned how many groups have been engaged in this process. But we want to spend a few minutes explaining to you how we go about the specific things we have to do. And it's our plan to do a different thing at each of these meetings. So tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the process for how we evaluate policies. And to do that, I'm going to invite Lisa Fink to come up. She's our lead for policy, and she's going to show you and tell you about how we do that.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Fink. I am the lead on policy on the ELEFA team, as was stated. I'm coming to Minneapolis and this work in the ELEFA team with experience having been living and breathing police policy writing since 2017, when I was hired by the Baltimore Police Department to help write compliant policies with its US DOJ consent decree. Since then, I have had the opportunity to learn a significant amount about both what is required to write a good police policy and what policy in policing is, how it's moving toward, basically where policing practices are headed. In that role, of course, I was researching and drafting policy, but I also sat at the table with our monitoring team in Baltimore and the DOJ attorneys, and we negotiated specific language like every sentence of the policies, which really gave me insight into what the policing practices and the specific vision of best practices DOJ has as it's working on police reform across the country. And since then, I've had the privilege of being able to apply that experience in other places as well. I did serve on the Cleveland monitoring team on their DOJ consent decree for 4 years. I've had the privilege of working with a small group of folks who is supporting the Puerto Rico Police Bureau in trying to come into compliance with their DOJ settlement agreement. And I do currently write police policy for a small university in Maryland. So first, I just wanted to level set and talk about consent decrees. This is a very unexciting slide. It's a whole bunch of images of consent decrees, but it's really helpful to understand that the language that ends up in a negotiated consent decree or settlement agreement, whether it be with the DOJ or a state entity like MDHR, oftentimes is reflective of higher standard in police practices. And it's really a good reflection of where policing is headed as a profession. The Minneapolis Police Department settlement agreement that we are currently monitoring is no different, right? These are written with, as somebody said, you know, the Constitution is the floor. In Minnesota, we also have the opportunity of the fact that the Minnesota Human Rights Act and the Minnesota Constitution have a higher standard in certain respects, that is the grounding of what then became the MPD settlement agreement. So with that also, besides starting with a solid agreement with some negotiated language that reflects best practices, we also, as a team, have a vast body of knowledge based on our direct experience in various roles. Many of us have directly implemented police policy in police departments. We have experience in managing police conduct through policy and supervision, and many of us have assessed the effectiveness of police policy through evaluating police practices. Some of us have worked for police departments, other of us have served on monitoring teams as subject matter experts in other cases, and we bring all of that experience and knowledge when we're reviewing policy. We also do have plenty of really wonderful research and resources that's available nationally. We're able to look to model policies for other police departments that have been under federal consent decree and just other model policies that exist in other places. There's a lot of really good national guidance from government entities, academic institutions, police research organizations, and advocacy groups. And all of that experience, those best practices experience, plus our personal experience and the language of the consent decree is what we bring to our review. So I wanted to, hopefully as briefly as I can, talk about what the process for reviewing policy, the 4 core topic areas of policy as it's prescribed in the MPD settlement agreement. So the MPD settlement agreement outlines a process for these 4 core policy topic areas, which actually represents nearly 80 different policies. The MPD has them all on their website. It's this long list of policies that fall under these big buckets of mission, vision, values, use of force, stop, searches, and arrest, and non-discriminatory policing. So the first step, the first step really happened last year before we were ever on the scene, and that was a massive community engagement effort that MPD did in order to have a whole bunch of public meetings to talk about these policy topic areas and garner feedback. Some of you may have had the opportunity to participate in those. So MPD took all of that feedback that they received last year, plus all of the work that they've been doing internally to draft, to update, to talk to their internal subject matter experts to get a solid draft of a policy. And then at this juncture, what they're doing is they're posting those policies online and offering a chance for the public to provide feedback in a 45-day period. And this is a chance for any entity, for CCPO, for organizations, for individuals to visit the website to review the policy. And if you are really into editing policies, that's the perfect space for you to jump into the policy review process. Currently, MPD has the non-discriminatory policing and the procedural justice policies on their website and open for public comment. So anyone is encouraged to go visit the website and read police policy. So after MPD receives public comment, they are required to consider and apply comment where they're able to. Then they come up with a new draft that they submit to us, ELEFA, and MDHR. MDHR has 14 days per the settlement agreement to give their comments or feedback, and ELEFA has 30 days to either approve or provide comments on the policy. So when we receive the policy, what we do, well, first and foremost, what I like to do is I visit the section of the settlement agreement and I remind myself about all of the requirements in that section. And then we review the policy through various lenses. We review it against the requirements of the settlement agreement, because of course all of the requirements of the settlement agreement need to be incorporated in the policy. And we'll flag if we feel that a paragraph either wasn't addressed or is missing some details or was not sufficiently addressed. It's really important that policies are clear and concise as they can be. Admittedly, it's sometimes difficult to make policies concise, particularly because there are many requirements, but to the extent that it can be as understandable as possible, because we need officers to understand it in order to be able to implement it. Also, it's really important that officers are able to implement it consistently, because they all understand, the meaning behind the words, and that the department is able to hold officers accountable because it's a clear policy. And when we're talking about conciseness too, we're also talking about just the way the policy is organized. For example, if there is a high priority, which there is in this settlement agreement, that de-escalation is one of the very first things that officers go to before they're even considering using force. That's something that needs to be right at the top. It can't be on page 20 of a policy, right? One of the other lenses we use is ensuring that the policy aligns with the guiding principles. The settlement agreement has both overarching guiding principles for the whole agreement, such as treating the community with humanity and dignity, non-discriminatory policing, among many others, and then each section has its own guiding principles. So really, the content of the policy has to align with those guiding principles. And then, as we mentioned, we do look and make sure that the policy, not make sure, but we look to see if the policies are reflective of best practices based on all that experience and that knowledge and those resources that I mentioned. And where we do have best practices to recommend, even if they're not required by the settlement agreement, oftentimes we still mention them and we try to encourage MPD to consider them because it might be something that really is a good thing for MPD and for the Minneapolis community. The other thing I just wanted to mention is I am not the only person that reviews policy. Every single team member is assigned a different topic section, so then when we get to that specific topic, there are at least 2 or 3 of us reviewing the policies so we can all make sure we are lending our lenses to the review. Then we come together, we make sure we agree with our comments before we send them back. Here's just an example of when we received the use of force guiding principles policy. One of the pages, of course, there were no comments on the blank side, and then we send it back. We send back a whole bunch of comments. You see my name a lot, but it's because I'm always the person typing at the computer. So we really do take a thorough review because we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to flag opportunities for best practice, and of course we do flag any places that we feel that the settlement agreement needs to be addressed in a stronger way. So after we come to an agreement internally about our comments, we send them back to MPD for them to consider and incorporate. And then, once they've come back with a new draft, they send it to MDHR and ELEFA, and ultimately the goal is to get to a final compliant policy. Oftentimes that'll result in meetings where we're talking about any open issues to make sure that we can kind of come to an agreement about where we think this policy needs to end up. And then the last thing I want to say is the settlement agreement has an explicit requirement that every year, so basically once a policy has been final and it's been active, on an annual basis, MPD is required to revisit those policies to ensure that it's achieving the goals, to ensure that there aren't any places where it's gone awry for some reason or another, or they've identified some issues with the policy. And then before they make any significant content changes to the policy, they're required again to put it out to the public for public comment in 2 mechanisms, both by posting it on the website as well as conducting additional in-person sessions. So there is both ample opportunity for the community to be involved in ensuring that those policies reflect the needs and desires of the community, and it's also simply a prescription and a requirement of the settlement agreement. So thank you for sticking with me through this presentation about policy writing, and I look forward to passing it along to the next speaker. Thank you.
I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought she made that interesting. Right. But I think you have a sense for how much work it takes to get a policy that is legally compliant and understandable so that it actually accomplishes its purpose. And I say that really to underscore our respect and appreciation for all the folks who have volunteered time to review these policies and provide feedback to the department, because we know that is a heavy lift. Okay. Now, as I said earlier, we hope to do a similar exercise at each of our meetings. Can we go back one? So this is, as I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with our evaluation plan. A lot of it's technical, how we're going to use data and compliance measures and things like that. But I think the big takeaway is these are the goals we've set for year 1 and year 2. You'll see year 1 is heavy on policy. It makes sense because that is the foundation for everything else. And as you'll see, as we implement policies, then we begin training, and you see the long list of policies that have to be promulgated in year 2. But you'll see that we'll be moving more into training. And so probably at our next meeting, just as we did tonight for policies, we're going to talk more about training and what makes for good training for officers today and how we evaluate that. And so we hope you'll come back for that. So our team meets every week to update each other on what's going on. And as you can imagine, some weeks we have a big topic to discuss or a few big things, but we always finish the call with sort of a lightning round, updates on the various areas of the agreement. So what we're going to do is replicate that a little bit, and for those who haven't gotten the chance to sort of address you, I'm going to ask each of them lightning round, just to give you a quick update on their areas. We're going to start with Chief Mary Ann Viverette.
Good evening, everyone. As David said, I'm Mary Ann Viverette. I'm a retired chief from Maryland, and I have the responsibility to help with accountability and oversight with the lead, Arlinda Westbrook, who has 12 years' experience running Internal Affairs Division in New Orleans. So in this role, we're to evaluate and monitor all of the actions of the Internal Affairs Division of the Minneapolis Police Department, as well as the Office of Police Conduct Review, which is also known as OPCR. I think it's well reported in this community that both of those units or divisions had backlogs of investigations, sometimes well over 300 cases. And as we talked about with some of you last night, when we dug into some of the issues, we found that there are various reasons for those backlogs. Sometimes you'll have something occur in a community where you have a large influx of cases, which is already on top of what the investigators already have assigned. Sometimes it's insufficient personnel. OPCR has had a lot of turnover. We were fortunate that some of the people that left OPCR decided they wanted to work in internal affairs, which was good. They brought their expertise. And then, of course, anytime someone's new in a division, you have to train those personnel. And then they've also incurred some software issues where they've either changed software or they've had some redundancy in the processes that they use. So we're working on those to reduce those redundancies. So the backlogs are bad for the community because when you make a complaint, you expect to hear what the outcome is and not have to wait 2 or 3 years. They're also bad for the officers. If the officer is accused of something and they've got this hanging over their head for 2 or 3 years with no resolution, that's not good. Or the other side of the coin is that they should have been disciplined efficiently and effectively in a timely manner, and that hasn't happened. So these are really important things that we're working on, and it's been a large part of our last 6 months. The city has hired some new personnel with OPCR, and they've also hired outside contractors as external investigators who are going to really help. Some of those are attorney firms who will help to reduce this backlog. Another large block of our time has been providing technical assistance. We're actively involved with both units in writing the standard operating procedures and their policies. And that's really important because it's going to keep everyone on the same page, and it eliminates any confusion with the employees on what their roles and responsibilities are. We've also been in discussions on helping to change and improve the disciplinary matrix in internal affairs, and also on coaching. And coaching is the non-disciplinary closure of cases. The city has recently hired Michelle Phillips, who's the new civil rights director. We're really impressed with her background and experience in this type of work, and we'll be working closely with her to develop the new investigators and to get the backlogs out from underneath them. So this is a learning curve, a lot of people learning a lot of new policies and procedures, but they're all being trained on them. So we have weekly meetings with all these units, and we're really proud of the coordination and cooperation that they've given us. And we'll look forward to reporting to you as we move on and progress.
Julie?
I'm starting my timer for you. My name is Julie Solomon. Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here today. My background is in behavioral health, and I worked with police departments around the country in the space of officer wellness and response to people in crisis. This settlement agreement, I'm covering sections 8 and 9, officer wellness and support, and behavioral health crisis response. I guess I want to just acknowledge to start out that this community, like many communities around the country, have experienced a great deal of trauma related to policing. And you know, I guess I want to come to the sort of level setting of all of us need to feel valued and supported, to be able to show up for each other, to our families, our workplaces, and that's true for policing and police officers as well. So I want to brief you on the last 8 months, I guess, that we have been going right now, and the sort of areas of focus have been on revising policies, working collaboratively with Lisa and others around new and revised policies. Right now, the training on wellness for officers is insufficient, and we're working on increasing training around wellness and support. Staffing, the staffing unit for the wellness unit is small right now. There are 2 dedicated people, and we're working to grow the wellness unit. They have hired a new civilian psychologist who's been a great addition to the team. We're having biweekly meetings and getting a lot accomplished during those biweekly meetings. They're working on expanded clinical services for officers and families. And by settlement agreement, they have produced drafts of the facilities, equipment, and non-database assessments and are working toward implementing those. Not just HVAC system and those sorts of things, but there's a lot related to wellness in those, including de-escalation rooms, cot rooms, mother's rooms, break rooms, those sorts of things. And the employee wellness plan really has set out a timeline and initiatives for wellness. And then in terms of mental and behavioral health response, right now it's mostly focused on training. All officers in Recruit Academy receive 40 hours of crisis intervention training. Annual in-service, they all actually just went through 8 hours of crisis intervention training, and new under settlement agreement is the 911 call center is required to go also through crisis intervention training. Sometimes the call centers, 911 call centers, get lost in the oversight in consent decrees and settlement agreements, and they play a really important role as true first responders answering 911 calls. And I think the last piece is the settlement agreement requires a 24/7 non-law enforcement crisis response, BCR teams that are operating under canopy. That is fully operational 7 days a week, and we're working at how to better integrate on those calls that do require police response. So right now that is missing. So thank you very much.
John?
Hi, I'm John Salamone. I'm the project manager for our team, which means that I set up and maintain the systems that keep us all working efficiently with each other and with the other organizations we work with, primarily the police department. So in short, I keep the wheels greased and herd the cats.
Meow. My name is Eric Malasan. I'm the former Deputy Commissioner of the Compliance Bureau out of the Baltimore Police Department. I was also the Chief of Staff. My expertise comes in the data technology and understanding the early intervention system. Those are critical pieces. The body-worn camera program is another priority that I'm looking through. Body-worn cameras are a critical piece of oversight. It gives us a very specific ability and a tool for us to come back and look and audit and review and understand the events that led up to a use of force, a stop, a search, an arrest, or any other action that needs to undergo a review for things like procedural justice, or whether or not there was an interaction that complied or didn't with non-discriminatory policies. So right now, the department is working on updating and aligning its body-worn camera policy with the settlement agreement. That's a critical core piece that we are looking to see be rolled out to the department before the end of first year of our oversight, which is mid-March. It's going through a process now where it'll be submitted to MDHR, it'll be submitted to us for review, and again, that'll be rolled out to the officers to ensure they understand when and how it's appropriate to use body-worn cameras and what the consequences are if they don't use it properly. Again, we want to make sure that the rate of compliance for using body-worn cameras is as high as possible so that we can see and audit and understand the activities, the greatest amount of data to be able to use an evaluative process. The early intervention system is also a critical tool. It's a huge part of the wellness component that Julie is working on and she's working on with us. The goal of an early intervention system is to get out in front of patterns, trends of what officer behavior could potentially lead to in terms of misconduct, improper uses of force. It's an integrated, high level of technology. And it's important that the department has the resources that it needs in order to pull together data systems from all across its operation. And so the department's also working hand in glove with the city's IT department to ensure that the data plan that they have, the systems of record, are up to snuff, that they can actually be resilient enough to sustain and provide the level of understanding for us, but also transparency for you, right? The documents generated through the data-driven process, writing reports, reviewing and supervisory logs, use of force reports, vehicle pursuits, and the like, require a level of documentation. You can't monitor what you can't measure, right? And so these systems of record are critical, and the investments that are being made now are being done in coordination with a plan that's been developed and should be finalized before the end of mid-March, that first year of our evaluation plan. So again, if there are questions about where the technology state are, there's a lot of things that have been done. They've done a full assessment in the department to try to figure out how can they be at a place where they can actually be responsive to our plan and the settlement agreement's requirements. And so right now we're seeing that level of commitment. Our goal is to ensure that there's proper coordination, because you can't simply develop an IT solution in the dark. This isn't a black box. You have to have involvement from the department, the folks who are using it, because if done properly, the right way, you can make and change how an officer and how the personnel within the department are using technology, make their working conditions better, make sure that technology is working for them, and that they're not working around the technology to get the job done. So that's part of the goal. It's about cost efficiency. It's about good connectivity. We want to make sure that those requirements are being met, because that's what the agreement requires.
Thank you, Eric. One member of our team is missing, Bill Murphy. He does training and use of force, but he broke his foot just before he had to come out here. So I said, that's okay. We'll cover both those things in our next meeting. We're going to spend particularly time on training. But I hope you can appreciate why I'm so proud of this team. They are really sort of the dream team for this work. So appreciate you guys. All right. Now, we're going to get to, we've done our updates. We've explained a little bit about what we do. And now we want to turn to the engagement piece of this. And I think we're going to have a QR code, or is that what's coming up? Yep. So get ready, we have a QR code. I want to talk to you about an idea that we put out in our evaluation plan, what we're currently calling the Implementation Liaison Council. So we don't have it fleshed out, and we have a few questions, so we're getting some feedback from you that will help us assess. But let me tell you about the concept. So we have these 3 meetings a year, and we appreciate folks coming out. The challenge is, while we have a lot of overlap this time, and we hope you all will come back next time, the risk with this is that we get one group of people at one meeting, and then another different group of people at the next meeting. And as we go down the road, some of the people at the beginning have decided, this is all going fine, I have other things that I can turn to. And then we have people who weren't with us at the beginning. And so then we haven't really accomplished our goal of educating the community about this process and about these reforms. So what we've been wrestling with is the idea of, can we create a structure that would have both continuity, how we can an organization that has both continuity and structure, an opportunity maybe to dive more deeply into some of these issues, a commitment to stick with us. We're not asking for a 5-year commitment, all right? But what we are looking for people who would say, yes, we will come, we will engage, and we will help you spread the word and answer questions that come for the community. Exactly how it will work and who's going to be on, we're just figuring it out. So if you go to the goals here, I should have covered this. For the council, what we want to do to represent the community, to inform the community, and then to develop connection skills and understanding required to support sustained implementation after the agreement ends. So the questions in the Mentimeter are really about, do you think it's a good idea? Would it be something you would consider doing? Don't worry, it's not a commitment. There's no signature required, but we just want to get a sense of whether it's something people think would be worth their time. What would be the size of that group? And maybe there's a couple of other questions, but it shouldn't take long. It should be the next survey question should automatically come up. Do you skip the question? Does that work? Okay. So we're not going to display all the answers because we have to study them. And let's face it, if you all say it's a terrible idea, I'd rather just deal with that separately. But we are going to take it back. And one of the questions we were asked last night, someone said, look, we got a lot of consultants come in town. They give us questionnaires. How do we know it's going to be used? Well, you'll know because we're going to tell you. We will put the feedback on our website, and we'll have a meeting where we'll explain to you what we did with the information we gathered tonight. And that reminds me to mention this meeting and last night's meeting are being recorded. They will be on our website, and I believe they will be closed captioned. The slides will be available on our website as well. All right? So we'll look forward to taking your feedback about the community, the Implementation Liaison Council, and then the other piece is community partner. We try and spend a lot of time here, but we're not here all the time. So we're looking for an individual or individuals or organizations who would be interested in partnering with us to help facilitate dialogue. I do want to say it's not a group that would speak for us. We are directly accountable to you and to the parties, of course, so we own that, but we are looking for a local partner who could help us with this work. So if you're interested, or if you think you have a candidate or someone who would be good for that, there's an application process. There's a questionnaire application on our website. All right. Now, that's what we have to say. So now we're ready to take questions and feedback and comments. While we do that, we do have a final Mentimeter question, which is, how did we do tonight? And so we have questions for you about what you thought about the length of the meeting and the content of the meeting and the format, and et cetera. And we'll take that feedback and use it to make the next meeting better. Now, we'll take questions. It's not like we got a workable group, so we're going to try and just get everybody in order. If you have more than one question, that's great, but I'd ask that you let everyone get their first question in before we get to your second question, and you get the first question or comment.
Testing, testing, testing.
Oh, yep, and we have a...
Thank you. We just wanted to say, so my name is Eileen Johnson, and this group in orange represents some of the 17 neighborhoods in our Minneapolis Neighborhood Safety Clubs. We're Neighbors, Business, Minneapolis Police Department, and Park Police Department, all working together, all moving forward in a spirit of friendship. We do a lot of walking, picking up litter, doing whatever our neighborhoods require of us, that what will help. We also have an entire education component to our group, and we thank you for having us here tonight. We're learning quite a lot, and we look forward to continuing to learn. We are available to help distribute information. That's one of the things we do really well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And are you on our map yet? Have you?
No, I'll get us on the map.
Please,
I'm sorry.
please,
Thank you.
please be on the map.
Thank you. I know, like David said, I was at the meeting last night, and I'm going to be trailing the meetings on behalf of my community. And I just want to say to people like Michael Talley, Aaron, Crystal Porter, Ray Dean, I want to say to y'all that's what we've been doing, and we've been working with ELEFA. We've been letting them know what we're doing because I think they are important because they're going to have to make sure that the policy that the city supposed to do get done. But I don't want to let the work go unnoticed of what over 300 meetings with the Unity Community Mediation Team, the Young People Task Force with AJ and them over there had over 200 meetings since George Floyd died, so we've been working. And I want Aaron and them, Christelle and them to know who's over the West Broadway, Michael Talley, that this is what we created, and we trying to build it out. The infrastructure, this is what we got to get back to our community. See, this agreement was about racism against African Americans and natives. Let's not forget that. Some got a public safety issue. We can't get to the public safety until we get this right. So our community have been working really hard to make sure that we do this part, not the policy. We ain't got the lawyers that Plymouth Church. I'm glad Plymouth Church got a lot of lawyers. We don't have that. What we have to use is our energy. And we need y'all's support as we working. We are working with MPD. We've been working with them since George Floyd died. So, and before that. So that's why I have to keep coming. I'm gonna keep coming. I'm gonna keep coming no matter where they at. I'm gonna go there until, because I don't want nobody to never forget what this was all about. And it was racism portrayed against African Americans and Native over many decades. So we can't, and people don't want to say that, but I have to keep saying it. And I have to keep saying it to people like Aaron and them to let y'all know we are doing something. These organizations, 10 organizations, we took ELEFA everywhere we knew to meet with people in different communities. That's not here tonight, wasn't there last night. That's why I have to do this. So I'm glad he said it's on videotape. I hope they don't cut me for telling, but I'm gonna keep working. I'm gonna work with them. I'm gonna work with Arlinda, she's been great. But I'm gonna keep saying what I'm saying because I want people to understand we want to get this right. We live in Minneapolis, so we have to get it right. But you can't leave the main part out. You never talk about it. This settlement agreement was about racism against African American and Native, and they need to say it too. Everybody needs to say why we here. That's why I got to keep saying it. If they don't say it, I'll be at every meeting saying this was about African Americans and Native, and we've been working. Look at this. When you leave, pick up one of these documents because community members, Black, Native, Somali, Latino, GLBT, you can go to a site on here if you got to file a police complaint. And we're working really hard on it, and I want y'all to be with us as we working on it. And then, like I said, they're good because they gonna make sure that we get done what we need to get done. And that's what I got to say. And thank y'all for coming out. And if you're at the next meeting, I'm gonna be there too.
This young lady over here, John, behind you.
Thank you so much. My name is Farhia Khalif. I am with Voice of East African Women and Somali Youth Link and a member of the Unity Community Mediation Team. And I really want to say thank you. Thank you to ELEFA for taking the time to come to Minnesota, especially Minneapolis, trying to clean up what's happening in our cities and build the trust within our communities and the city of Minneapolis Police Department. Our work as a community when we engage every day. When we see many community organizations, such as the ones are here tonight, many organizations are here tonight, and some of those last night. So this shows us that programs like ELEFA coming in town, engaging the community, just telling us, looking within yourself, because you already have it. And sometimes just sitting here listening to that. But it's not the problem we pointing fingers at the police, but what about 3 fingers pointing back to us? So how can we all work together? And I just wanted to get up to say thank you for what you guys doing, and we shall continue doing what we're doing. Our program, Somali Youth Link, right now we're on the streets. We're marching on the streets in downtown, and such as my friends right here, the neighborhood groups who walk all the time and trying to save the community. The Unity Community Mediation Team are excited about partnering with the communities, welcoming ELEFA, because if we don't all work together, we're not going to get there. I just want to say thank you again for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And we want to acknowledge that the Unity Community Team entered into an MOU with the city long before we got here, and the DNA of that agreement is in the agreement, in the state agreement. So as Arlinda was acknowledging earlier, we recognize this work began long before we got here, and we expect it will continue long after we are gone. Yes, sir.
My name is Bill Dramel. I just have a question. You mentioned about the Department of Justice and the possibility that maybe cut it off. From what you've spoken of here, it seems like you're all we need. So my question is, if the DOJ is there, do they have an umbrella and you're under it? Are you over here and they're over here? And do they say you're not doing this right? Or do they just let you do what you want and then they just kind of stand off? And by the way, Lisa has great shoes.
So as we understand it, these were negotiated jointly. In fact, in our agreement, it acknowledges that the DOJ had issued findings, and it contemplated that the monitor selected for the state would likely be the monitor for the federal agreement, and that the DOJ, I think, communicated its views to the state and the city concerning the monitor. So we think that if there is an agreement, we would enforce that one as well. I'm going to come to Anthony next. Let's see. So it's no good. Now, what happened after that? We're not read into it, and so I really can't answer. Although for it to work, they have to be harmonious. It is contemplated they would work together. We'll just have to wait to see what we get. I think I can also say, because it's been in the news and it's kind of obvious, the Trump administration does not do consent decrees. So I think, as everyone recognizes, once the Trump administration comes in, it's unlikely that there would be a federal consent decree here. It's possible, but past experience would tell us there isn't. If there is one before the Trump administration comes in and is approved by the court, then it becomes an order of the federal district court and can't be undone by the parties without the court's consent. So I think that's the deadline that the parties are probably working toward, and I certainly acknowledge that the city has expressed publicly its commitment to trying to get it done.
I'm glad that I got to comment now. It's a joint venture that is going on, and both of the decrees are based on law. Violation of a decree means that federal constitutional law has been violated. So Trump or nobody else has power to overrule that, because the decrees were based on violation of constitutional rights. We got 7 people that died in the county jails. Just recently it was on the news. We have a lot of death going on under these people, and they have us in their custody. They're supposed to take care of us. We're not supposed to be dying in their custody and on the streets too. We got racist Christmas trees in the precinct down here and everything else. All this is on record. All this is a violation of constitutional rights. They found Phoenix police department be violation of constitutional rights. Violation of constitutional rights are punishable by up to life in prison. This is all law that these decrees are based on. How can they be undone? Call somebody else's precedents. That's ludicrous.
So you make a really important point building on this gentleman's point. The state consent decree, state agreement cannot be undone by the federal government. So that will go forward and it will make important changes. But you are absolutely right. It is a matter of law, and the federal government, whatever they do, they can't undo what's been done here already.
Then their decree was based on violation of constitution.
You're right. You're right.
That's what a decree is. It means that constitutional rights have been violated.
You're right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Pearl Warren, and my question is for Eric. Eric, you are in charge of the data and early intervention systems to get in front of officer behavior. So then, is that part of monitoring the officers that are transformed into our police force that have committed a lot of other offenses in a lot of other states and what have you, to ensure that we have good quality officers, and then also to get in front of the officers who have had an extensive history of unfavorable behavior to ensure that they have several seats so they're not out in the streets doing additional things that are not safe to the community? Is that part of your?
So that's a great question. The early intervention system, and there are a lot of pieces of the puzzle that go into this information that's provided. Some of the things you're talking about are important for the recruitment and background process, especially when it comes to those with prior law enforcement experience in, let's say, within Minnesota that are coming to the Minneapolis Police Department. The biggest challenge, and this is just from our own experience, but the biggest challenge is that the laws in Minnesota that require sharing of that information amongst law enforcement agencies, they don't apply to Iowa or Illinois or North Dakota or any other state from which a person might be moving into the state. The process for backgrounds is not part of the settlement agreement for us to review. However, when it comes to information about whether or not there are civil or criminal violations from those individuals, and there are things that are triggered that result in cases that the department needs to know about, there are requirements that they connect with data systems from the county prosecutor's office, and the information that is trying to be gained from this is about the officer's search and arrest history for how they're interacting with the public, right? The biggest things that the early intervention systems were built around is looking at the officer's performance and seeing if there are patterns and trends that could potentially lead to an improper use of force, an improper, misconduct issue, whether or not they're working way too much overtime, and so they're faced with stressors that could result in improper decision making. There's a host of factors based on really good data and really good analysis from other jurisdictions and based on a data-driven approach, that if a direct intervention can happen through the officer support side, you can prevent the misconduct before it even happens, right? But to answer your question about the background history, that is a huge critical piece of the puzzle. It's making sure you're hiring the right folks with the right information, and that the information is readily available for background units to suss out and potentially disqualify a person from becoming an officer to begin with. Those are things that are technically not part of our settlement agreement, but do lend themselves to a good practice of understanding how that data can be leveraged appropriately. Julie.
Julie, everything that Julie's doing around the mental health stuff is in vain.
Yeah.
Because you can't correct that, like that's incorrectable behavior. So if there's standards that we have to apply to us as citizens, even if I wanted to apply for a position like that, then there still should be standards that are in place for officers as they are moving around from force to force to force, because then after something happens, we see this long laundry list of all kind of stuff that this individual did and how he's hopped from state to state and county to county and city to city. And it's like, why is he still allowed to be able to exercise or uphold the law when he's been in violation of the law all this number of times? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's just my pushback.
That's good pushback. The part of the hard stuff of what we have to do is just to say there are limits on what we are able to do. We are constrained by the agreement to do. We can only require the department to do the things within agreement. It doesn't mean we can't engage them in discussions about other things maybe they want to consider. And it certainly doesn't constrain this community from demanding other things. As we said, we are the floor, we're not the ceiling. But I do want to talk about how early warning systems can help address the problem. As we have accountability systems and early warning systems, what we're doing here is changing policies, procedures, and those policies and procedures will drive a culture. And a good culture weeds out bad apples. So if you have a good, strong culture, what will happen is if someone does get in who shouldn't be there, their peers or the system will flag those infractions early, and if it's appropriate, you weed them out. So we can't require restrictions or requirements outside the terms of the agreement, but within the terms of the agreement, we can insist, and the agreement will provide safeguards to get those people out earlier. Next, can we next? Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
Hi, my name is Aaron Abram. First and foremost, I want to thank you for being here. Just doing a rudimentary search of your website as well as your history has given me some confidence about the individuals that we are working with through this. Minneapolis and Minnesota, we're not new to change. What we're new to is sustainability. We see people come in and try to do things a lot, and then after the money runs out, the folks run out. And so my main thing is around this Liaison program that you are so interested in starting. It's a twofold question. The first part of the question being, have you conducted this in other cities? And if you have conducted it in other cities, how was that process in regards of who will be on that committee? Because for lack of a better quote, everybody that's skinfolk ain't kinfolk. So you can be from Minneapolis, you can be from the neighborhood, but that doesn't mean you represent the interests of the entire neighborhood. You represent the interests of your home. And so when we're talking about sustainability, what we're talking about here in the city of Minneapolis is ensuring that this group that you will be utilizing, their sweat equity, in order to keep you connected to us, is a group that once you leave can still continue to do that work. And so the final portion of the question would be, is there a way that this same group that you would utilize through their sweat equity would be a group that could be melded into, if not an official part of the city, so that they would be able at that time to not only keep their finger on the pulse, but I mean, if we need to press this magic button for the Avengers all over again, that y'all will be able to pop up and show out. Thank you.
So I love that question. So the answer is it has not been done. You all are the test bed. But let me tell you why. Because as we've looked at the evolution of consent decrees and what we've experienced, they haven't really built for robust community engagement. Some have elements of it, but I don't know that there are any that anyone would say are a model. So we are trying to build the model. So we haven't done it. This is an idea that we're trying it out to see if we can create the structures we need for sustainability. And it is exactly our goal. That's why we have the community map. And I think on the slide, one of the elements was to build the connections and skills so that foundation is in place when we go, and we're going to be here a while, so we don't have to solve it now, but as we get to the end, I think you all will begin to decide, well, what do we do with this council once implementation is done? What do we want to do next, or where do we want to go? So we will pass that decision off to you when we're done here.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Thoman. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Minneapolis. Again, very impressed with your work. Thanks for what you're doing. We've actually been engaged in this issue since George Floyd's murder. We've had a committee working on this. We have a lot of information on our website, and we've also been addressing some of the policy concerns, and it's important to know that not all the policies are made at the city level. There are lots of different levels of government that impact policing, and we're looking at all of those. But I did want to mention that the part that I think we're really relevant to paying in the next year is the fact that we're tired of elections, right? There's a big election next year. The mayor and every city council member is on the ballot. So what they do between now and the next election should inform how we approach asking them questions as they come asking for our vote. So we're going to be really involved in staying up to date with what's going on and knowing that our city council members and the candidates who oppose them are aware of what's happening, and we can ferret out where they stand on this, including candidates for mayor. So we hope to stay engaged in that regard.
Thank you. Now I need help tracing the order of hands. So we do, all right, got that? All right, here we go.
Hi, my name is Malika Avon. I'm the executive director at the Legal Rights Center. We're a nonprofit public defense corporation that's been around in Minneapolis for 55 years. I was really concerned at the beginning how you opened and said that your team hadn't been working or didn't have information. You weren't going to be discussing Mr. Moturi's shooting. And there's a specific comment that you made, and I'm not sure if it was in jest or serious, that there might be community members in the room who know more about that than your team does. That's deeply concerning to me when your group is having weekly meetings with the department and regular communication with the chief. So my two-part question following Aaron is, first, why and how is your team able to respond when there are very dangerous, very high-level incidents happening with the department, and then the everyday sort of issues that we know are happening on the streets constantly? And then secondly, I didn't hear very much about culture change, and I understand that policy is a first step and we've got a few years, but there are young people, there are adults, there are everyday community members who are actively being harmed by MPD, and I didn't hear anybody talking about what your active efforts are today to start shifting culture. So that's what I'd love to hear about.
I'll take the first part. So all I really meant was we don't run the department. We defer to the department. So it's their responsibility in the first instance to address incidents like the Maturi shooting. But we monitor and we engage in that process, so we're just giving it time. And my only, by saying others, I just don't know who's, I know people have a lot of information, and you have the council president here, I'm not suggesting he does, I'm just saying I recognize that there is knowledge and expertise beyond ours, but we will fulfill our responsibility to review, and we will address how the department handled it. When it comes to the question of culture change, we have the leading expert in the country on culture change in police departments, so I'm going to let him take that one.
Thank you, Dave. Very good observation. I mentioned culture change in other places in my remarks. It is the hardest of all things to do. And I would say that while all of us are doing hard things, writing good policy, getting all that approved, figuring out what's the best thing for Minneapolis, because what works somewhere may need to be tailored for your city. And so we're doing all of that. But culture change comes when the 5 buckets that I'll mention are all addressed, and the department is now working differently and better in these buckets of policy, training, supervision, management, and discipline. When all 5 of those have been affected and members of the department unlearn the incorrect way to perform and relearn through the good teaching based on good policy, the constitutional best practice way. And then supervisors are retrained on what supervision really is. Managers are retrained on what management really is. And then the disciplinary system reflects that supervisors are really supervising. Managers are really managing. So when all of that's working together, you begin to see an agency perform better because it's been transformed. Very good. It's been transformed. It takes time. It takes a long time. But it is possible. But it takes vision, it takes leadership, it takes hard decisions. It takes making sure that the people who are charged with supervising and managing have both capacity and willingness to do it. They have to have the will and the capacity to do it. And when they don't, we have to find the people who do. And then when they do, hold them accountable. Part of the early intervention system is to make sure we take performance issues that be patterns of performance to correct them before performance becomes behavior. That's a big difference. And so we want to make sure that, but in doing that, we have to make sure supervisors know how to read the signs. And when the red flag goes up, supervisors understand how to recognize that as improper and deal with it and correct it. But all of that is about retraining and retooling, but we have to first get a lot of people to unlearn bad practices. And supervisors, what I've noticed, a lot of supervisors, not all, but a lot, do not believe discipline is a part of their responsibility, and it is. They think internal affairs bears the burden of discipline. Every member of the department bears the burden of discipline, especially when we have a duty to intervene. So everybody is responsible for it. But getting everybody to now adapt and adopt to that mindset is how culture change. But it will take reforming and revamping policy, training, supervision, management, and discipline. And when all of that's been corrected and we're performing to all of that now to the new best practice way, you will see the culture change. You will see officers begin to say, we don't do this anymore. One of the things I think, a testimony we saw in New Orleans, a New Orleans police officer was on a scene and another officer from a different jurisdiction, two officers on the same scene from different jurisdiction. One officer from the other jurisdiction was doing something that we used to do, and the New Orleans officer say, hey, we don't do that anymore. That's not us. We don't do that. You will see officers do that, and it will be different. But culture is hard to change because it means you're changing thinking and mindset. We're here to help them do that.
And going back to the Maturi shooting, I thought I had said earlier, but Arlinda pointed out I failed to mention, the city has said there will be an external review. And consistent with what Michael said earlier, what we want is a self-correcting agency. So we're waiting for the details of that, and we're certainly going to share with the...
That's not correct. They said they would do an after-review report. They didn't...
The police said that. The city said they'd do an external.
But it has to go to the auditor first.
Right.
I just want to say, what we were told at the city council meeting is that the auditor must first be able to go through their after review, and only the auditor can bring in an external investigator. You can't do it until there's been that audit, and that is not due till June. So the city can't commit to anything until after that audit.
I'll take that back. That's not my understanding, but I'm not disputing what you're saying, so we're going to take that back. Okay.
David, can I address what the young lady asked about officers moving from jurisdiction to jurisdiction?
Please.
I was part of some work that was happening nationally. In 2020, there was work being done because of what happened here, because of what happened in Louisville and in other places, that states began to change their laws to create registries and a duty to report misconduct to the state to disqualify officers, to make them ineligible. If they were terminated from an agency, it made them ineligible for employment at another law enforcement agency. Now, that work was done as recommendations from the United States Conference of Mayors to go out to the mayors of all the cities as a recommendation for mayors to do that. But it also went to, the mayors were supposed to take it to their state legislatures. Many states did that. When I was in Baltimore, Maryland did that. Louisiana did that. Many states do. I'm not familiar if Minnesota has done that, but many states did that. And so when officers are terminated, agencies are required to turn that to the Police Officer Standards and Training Commission, or the Post Commission in every state, that certifies officers to be officers in that state. And that certification is then stripped so that they cannot go to other agencies. So it is something at the state legislature level that, if not already addressed, should be addressed at that level. But many states have already done that.
So I have, excuse me, my name is Buzzy Bond, and I live in Northside, and as Maury said, I'm kind of the neighborhood community historian. I have two questions. One is, will the changes, like culture change, be easier here in that we lost so many officers, and so now we're building up a department with new officers? So is that easier if you get them like from the get-go? My second question has to do with mental health issues. I know, I've lived in my current house for 45 years. So I know my garbage guy, I know my mailman, and I know the officers at the 4th Precinct. And I can tell you that after Jamal Mitchell was killed here like 6 months ago, I saw mental health. I mean, I saw the sadness and the trauma in some of these officers because Jamal Mitchell had done some of his training at the 4th Precinct. And so I'm really concerned about the amount of overtime our guys do because we're so short of officers, and how that's affecting their mental health. And what, and are there things that we can, as a community, that we can do to help our officers in their mental health issues?
Michael, then Julie.
Yeah, I want to say that, first of all, none of us can look into the future and know what will happen tomorrow, next year. So, but what is likely to happen, and the answer is likely, yes, it will be easier because you have lost more than 300 officers. So you went from being more than 850 officers down to somewhere around 500. So a lot of people have left, but new people are coming in. And so we're not changing the minds of 880 people. We're changing the minds of 500 people, and new people that are coming in are born into the new way. And so our goal, and what this settlement agreement aims to do, is to make the department self-assessing, self-correcting. And the department will be designed to fix it, to identify what is wrong with itself and fix itself once all of this is over. New officers who are coming into the new way. They are learning the new best practices, the new training. They're operating on brand new best practice policy. So as more new officers come, along with those who have left, we're working to train people to the new way, but we're training fewer people who are here doing it the wrong way. Many of them have gone. There's still a lot of very good seasoned veterans here. Here's what we hear when we go to roll calls. Like Mary Ann and I were here last month. We went to all the districts. The officers say, we're here because we want to be here. We know what happened, but we love it and we want to be here. We could go other places, but we want to be here. And they're showing true commitment. That's to be commended, that they want to stick it out because they can see that this will get better. And so it is not just my hope, it is what we have seen in other places, that we will bring all of those lessons learned to help it happen here.
Yeah, you could just stay up there and take the next. Julie's going to go, and then you can manage. You can stay up there.
For the record, I have two people waiting on questions on this side of the room, but I will give this to Julie.
I will be very brief. Thank you for bringing that up, and I agree with what Chief Harrington just said. We're all over the country. We're seeing young officers coming in, and young officers and young people generally have much more openness to mental health. I have 5 grown adult children, and I'm amazed at their insight and ability to talk openly about mental health, and that's encouraging. I see it. We do ride-alongs around the country when we do police assessments, and hearing young officers talk about their mental wellness, the stress on their families and their kids, it is encouraging in that they're open to the discussion and talking about it and getting help. So, the other side to that is what Michael was talking about with accountability and management and supervision and discipline, because some of the older officers have more struggle around some things. Not all, certainly not all. There's a lot of older officers who are dedicated to this work, but there's also officers that have been around for a while that know the old world. And so having a solid culture of accountability is important to that too. So on the flip side, and I said this earlier, we have a lot of work. The city and the police department have a lot of work to do around creating a culture of wellness permeating the department up and down the chain of command, and that's not there right now. So we're working really hard to make to have priority and put pressure on that happening in these first couple of years of this settlement agreement. There is, like I said, a small but mighty unit that their hearts and minds and spirits are dedicated to this, and they're working hard to start getting some of the foundational pieces of wellness moving. So thank you for asking that question.
Hi, I'm Paula Chesley. I live in the 5th precinct, and I just want to thank the gentleman, I don't know where he is, that kind of wanted us to remember that this was, at the end of the day, about racist and misogynist policing practices from MPD. And I'm wondering what can be the role of individual citizens in this. In 2018, I saw some, just like a police officer and like young black youth interactions that I just felt like it was a little heavy-handed. There was no violence involved, but like for what they were doing, which is basically standing around, I didn't feel that it warranted the type of like response. And so I wrote a letter to the police chief at that time and the mayor and my city council person, and I just said like, hey, I was really nice about it. I just said like, here's what I saw, wondering if you could do it a different way. Like, here are some possible solutions, and I didn't get a response back. So like, just as an individual citizen, like how can we practice accountability, or how can we help in this practice and in this process?
I think the best thing a citizen can do is meet your precinct commander. Get to know the commander and the leaders in charge in the precinct where you live. Get to know the officers who work there. Now, they're always moving around answering calls, but there are meetings that your neighborhood could invite your precinct inspector to and voice your concerns. There are meetings happening in districts, community meetings, where you can go to meet the leaders of your precinct to let them know who you are, where you live, and what the concerns are. That's one way. Then there is, for things that you see that you might believe are violations, and you want to file a complaint, there are a number of ways to file complaints against police officers now. You can do it at a number of sites across the city. I think Mr. Flowers talked about that earlier. And you can do that at Internal Affairs. So the complaint process has become extremely robust for when you need to file a complaint against an officer. And it's part of what we review now, making sure that, number one, it's being addressed, that you're notified of it, and it's being handled in a fair and impartial best practice in a speedy way. And so this light keeps getting on. So those two things, I think, are very, very important. one more than another, get to know your precinct commander, because when you get to know the precinct commander, you're going to start getting to know the officers. And the officers will perform differently when there's an expectation to perform differently, because the people know them and they have a connection with their leaders. And they realize that their leaders are going to find out if they don't perform right.
We have additional answer from the crowd as well. Oh, sorry.
All my life here in North Minneapolis, and the police would pit neighbors against each other, okay? If I knew there was a bad house on the corner and they were doing bad stuff, police would come by and knock on my door. Well, who you complaining about? Down the street. He go down the street, knock on the door. Your neighbor down there complaining about it. Now we got a rift in the community. You understand what I'm saying? So how do we mitigate anonymously being able to report things that we don't want to come back to our houses or to our community for bad cops or bad anything, right? Because again, that plays out in our neighborhood. And y'all know it, we know it. And it's a hard time when we have to deal with it and they go home to the suburbs and they done just created this problem between me and that neighbor down the street, and all we was trying to do was tell the truth about what was going on.
Before you answer, what you described is not supposed to happen. That is not supposed to happen. Now, but there are two answers to your question. One is that it's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not supposed to happen. My name is Russell Fujisawa. I'm the new director of the Office of Police Conduct Review. You can absolutely file an anonymous complaint. You will not receive the same communications, obviously, because we can't follow up, but we still are beholden to the requirements in the agreement to communicate, to investigate, to follow up, to send cases to the CCPO panel, to make it to the chief for disposition. So there absolutely are multiple ways through UCMT, through 311, through our office directly. You can come into City Hall, you can call City Hall. Our office will file every complaint, and we will investigate each one seriously. And if there is a dismissal, you will hear about that as well. Obviously, if it is anonymous, we can't disclose that to an individual, but it will be out there. We will investigate.
We have another question over here.
My question is for Lisa Fink. So, wait a minute. You said that there was policy and with policy and practice and all of these different things that we can provide public comment on policy and what have you. How frequently does this happen? How does the public know when a policy is up for them to be able to comment and say, yay, nay, no, I don't like this sounds like fluff, or whatever, or, and if you're not a part of a specific organization, then how will you know? Like, how will you know that this is out there, that this is up for review, that these things are happening, and how, the frequency of those things?
So I'm going to put our community, or our MPD folks on the spot. The policy review process, the public feedback process, is something that is managed by MPD. They are the ones who are crafting the policies, who are posting the policies, and who are informing the public. That is a significant part of the requirements of the agreement. So I'm hoping that somebody can speak to the exact process of how you all let the community know that policies are up for review, so that people have the opportunity, and how they might be able to at least get on. I know that you have an email list, how they might be able to join the email list, and if there's any other mechanisms that we let the community know when specific policies are out for comment. Is that a reasonable? Ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, so right now we're working on an updates page. So we have an updates page on the City of Minneapolis website, and we're working on a Gov. So anytime any policy is updated, if you just sign up for that updates page, it'll automatically send you the policy that we're currently working on or that we're currently pushing out. And I think that's going to be the best way. Until that page is up and running or that email is up and running, the best way is to go to the City of Minneapolis website, implementation updates, and there you'll find the policies that we're pushing out. But that should be up and running by the end of this month.
We got a question over here, and then we're gonna go back and forth to the side so that we make
There
sure
was
we get
one
it.
more
So-
item, I think.
I'm sorry, and if you want to just leave a contact, we can just get you on our email mailing list now, and we can push it out that way as well, before the updates go up, sorry.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. My name is Raymond Dean. I'm a Northside resident, kind of recent, 25 years. I've only been here 25 years, so. I'm wondering if you all had a chance to look at what the last time there was real police reform in the city of Minneapolis, when Tony Boza came here in 1980, and what he did to transform a police department that had all gone rogue. Unfortunately, he died a year and a half ago, so you can't talk to him directly, but he's got lots of video footage and writings out there that I think you all could learn a little bit about that.
We will.
And the one thing that I have not heard mentioned tonight is the Police Federation contract, which has a huge, huge impact on anything related to culture and behavior of police officers. And I'll leave my comments at that.
All I can say that's outside our scope, but I certainly understand its importance and how impactful it can be. Okay, here, and then you've been waiting a long time, but we'll come back over to this side.
So I'd like to follow up before I ask my question on the police contract. Yesterday, Arlinda Westbrook talked about working with our group, Minneapolis for a Better Police Contract, and learned a lot from our recommendations. We've heard a lot from Ms. Solomon about officer wellness, in which a lot of those recommendations take place. So I disagree vehemently that the contract has no purview. It most certainly does, and there's a lot that can be done and tied in with the settlement agreement. I want to point out that neither Baltimore nor New Orleans is out of their consent decree. We're going through these sessions tonight and last night as if Baltimore and New Orleans are no longer under a court order. Baltimore has been under court order since 2015. They are not anywhere near leaving. New Orleans has been under court order since 2013, and ELEFA and the city are trying to say to the judge, well, we think they've passed all the tests. And you have scores of community groups who have come in and said, you're not being disclosing of your data, your community engagement has collapsed, we handed out materials, it's there. So my question is, to ELEFA, what lessons have you learned in Baltimore and New Orleans, since they're still in their consent decrees, about transparency, about data and methodologies, which was skimped over here? And what have you learned, lessons learned, so that we don't have a collapse of community engagement even before it starts here in Minneapolis?
So let me start with that, and then I can turn it over to Michael. So just to be clear, ELEFA is not in New Orleans. I am the deputy monitor for New Orleans, but it's not ELEFA. But to the end, in New Orleans, it's the Department of Justice and the city that have made a motion to the judge to allow it to move into sustainment. We don't make that motion, we just report the state of affairs, and the judge will ultimately decide. But the question about what we've learned from the experience in New Orleans is an excellent one. And that actually in part goes to the Community Liaison Council that we were talking about, because we recognize for these to be successful, it is helpful to have more robust community engagement. What I would also say about data is tough, because data is complex and it depends on what you measure and how you measure. And people can have two different valid data methodologies that produce different results. And it can be a challenge to reconcile those. So what we really have to focus on is the bottom line outcomes that these agreements are intended to achieve. And we want to make sure that we are seeing a reduction in improper policing practices. So for example, in New Orleans, I don't think there's been a fatal police shooting in a couple of years. And for New Orleans, that's a huge difference. So in terms of the bottom line metrics that we're looking at, we have to really always keep in mind what change on the ground we're looking to see. And then we test that in a number of ways, through data, through people's experiences, through testing the systems. So there are a number of lessons that we've learned, not just out of New Orleans, but as Lisa was saying, years of experience with consent decrees, and each one contributes lessons to the next one. Some of those lessons are reflected in subsequent agreements, and other lessons are lessons that various monitors use. So it's a constantly evolving process. Michael, did you want to?
I would say continuity of leadership is very important. And people, I said this earlier, people who have both capacity and the will to lead and to transform an agency is extremely important. I was given an opportunity to leave New Orleans and go somewhere else. I accepted the opportunity. There are a number of reasons why that still is in New Orleans and why it still is in Baltimore. I accepted an opportunity when my time was up in Baltimore to not continue and to join this team and do this work. I would say the people in those departments think differently now. And the lessons learned is that when we make decisions to make people lead, supervise, and management, those who can do it and do it well because we invest in training, we invest in their professional development. They then train other subordinate members of the department, and the culture, as the young lady said, the culture begins to change. And one of the big lessons I learned is the smartest person in the room may not be the best person to supervise or manage or lead. I promoted somebody who I thought was really, really bright, and he was a doctoral candidate. And I learned that he was one of the poorest managers in the agency. And so that's a valuable lesson that I learned in New Orleans that I brought to Baltimore. And so figuring out who is really buying in and how to make people buy in. And I think the lesson learned is we have to point to the right way and hold people accountable and create a culture of accountability. And it is a hard thing to do, but we have to have continuity of leadership to make sure that when one leader leaves, that vision continues and it doesn't backslide.
Thank you. Jane Lansing, League of Women Voters, Public Safety Committee. First of all, thank you very much. This is terrific. I think I've told you guys before, sometimes it feels like things are a black hole, and then you see all this stuff and it feels gratifying to see some of the progress. And is there a way to get updates on an interim basis before like next March? I mean, I'd like to see your spreadsheet up there, like, or your little quick hit things that you do, or some way to get some kind of updates so it sort of feels like there's progress, or to know what's going on, or to kind of what to expect, so that there's some way to see something besides coming here, which gets me to a couple of my questions. It's a bit sort of sad to me that there's like 80 people here and 50 people last night when there's so much great information coming out. And I'm sure all of us will do our best to get this out to our stakeholders. We certainly communicate to our stakeholders and the voters that we educate. But when we talk to people about this, people want to know, how does the average person get more engaged? And do you have a suggestion for people who want to become more engaged? I don't know if they're to the point of wanting to be a liaison, but they feel a little bit lost and left behind. So I guess my two questions are, is there a way to get interim updates, and how might somebody become engaged? Maybe not to the degree that we are, who've read your evaluation plan, but
You did.
yes, exactly. So, thank you.
So thank you for that. So I should have said earlier, we'll use that smart sheet to generate reports and compliance status reports. We haven't posted it yet because we haven't really begun the assessment process, but as we do, we'll put them up, and then they will be updated at regular intervals. And when we do these updates, we keep a mailing list, and we put it out there to alert people that it's happened. We're still figuring out the engagement thing. We recognize that for most people, like, I applaud you and appreciate you all for spending now more than 2 hours at the end of a long day, and I know a lot of people can't do that. We struggle with how to make it more accessible, so we are very open to suggestions about that, and maybe we can do maybe we can do newsletters or some kind of something we can put out for people. But we're a little bit constrained about how, we're not allowed to make media statements about the consent of the parties, which they have allowed, and that makes sense. I don't know how social media fits in, but we're very open to finding ways to make this more accessible to more people.
Let me just say that part of why we were getting information is not only if you want to be a part of Liaison Council, but we want to continue to build out the map. So we want individuals and organizations to fill that out so that I can follow up with them. And part of what we've been talking about is making sure we have targeted meetings with some groups that maybe not be able to come out here. They may not want to come to a big meeting like this, but they definitely want to be a part of this process, engage. So that's the reason we want to start with at least getting everybody that you know of and anybody that's here tonight to fill out that survey about the organization or the individual. And then I will definitely follow up with them, and then we will continue to build out how to continue engaging in a more targeted way with some of those groups that may not be in this space as actively as others.
And the city could update their timelines too, because nothing's happened since you published the evaluation plan, except for those two policies. So that looks like a little bit of nothing.
We'll look into that. Okay.
Another question.
No, I'm just checking. But go ahead. We just want to make sure. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Lee McGrath. Ms. Viverette did a nice job talking about the role that the chief will play, and it's encouraging to see that the executive director of the Office of Police Conduct Review is here, and new responsibilities are headed, I suspect, are headed your way. But there's a second means, in a second process in which complaints could be settled, and the best practices include augmenting state civil rights acts. Colorado, New Mexico, and Connecticut have recently enacted new civil rights acts that address the problem of qualified immunity. And I wonder whether it is in the scope of your charge to look at legislation that already has been introduced at the Minnesota State Legislature that would create an additional cause of action for constitutional violations in state court far stronger than what currently exists under Minnesota's Tort Claim Act, or the problems of bringing 1983 actions in the Eighth Circuit given qualified immunity?
It is, the short answer, it is not within our scope, but we have the League of Women Voters is very engaged in state level actions. There are other groups I know that are mobilizing on that issue. So while it's not something that's within the scope of our authority, it's not an issue that is going unaddressed, I believe, here in Minnesota. Do we have over here?
Any other questions?
I know we're past the 2-hour time. We're not going anywhere. So we're happy to take, I think what we're going to do, unless there's a last question, take a last formal question from this gentleman here, but we'll be here to chat for a while if people have other questions or comments.
Hi, I'm Shane McCaffrey. I don't reside here in St. Louis Park, but all these parties involved reminds me of an opportunity being missed potentially of intersecting, maybe out of the scope of what this conversation is here tonight, but understanding how we can watch the human crisis intersect with the climate crisis. Waste reduction, drinking water, all these things are happening at the same time. And as you said earlier, each of these decrees are different in different cities. So why are we not sharing resources more? Why are we not getting together for the same reason on solving the human crisis part at the same time of the climate crisis?
I think absolutely you can. Our role is kind of limited about what we can do, but we would certainly, to the question of how do you get the word out, if groups ask us to speak to them, we can do that. But part of what we're trying to do is build those connections, and so the connections that we think our community map is helping people identify, I think could help address exactly that need. Thank you all for your time and attention. There is our couple last things. The final Mentimeter survey, I think maybe I mentioned, it's about how we did, content, length, all that, so please give us your feedback. In the next few weeks, we'll be issuing our semi-annual report. We give it to the parties. They have a period of time to review, but you should see that in the coming weeks, and it goes on our website, and we'll we'll send something out to be on the lookout for it. And as I said, if you have any other questions, we'll still be here for a while. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you in March at our next meeting.